Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is July 4th, 2020, and this is your daily Ukraine update, and I am here to report the fall of Lysychansk. Let's get into it. So, as we can see, this is the map as of the 1st, and you can see over the weekend, Ukrainian forces have completed their withdrawal from the Lysychansk area. You can see here is the city, and we've been talking for a while about this as sort of an inevitability as Russian forces close in. I would treat some of these map updates with a grain of salt. Obviously, I think the end state, this front line here, is pretty locked in, but I suspect that the actual withdrawal from Lysychansk may not have necessarily looked exactly like this, but it could have. We've talked about the Russians need to push hard to seize this intersection right here. It seems like they made the same assessment I did, seizing it on the 3rd. But Ukrainian forces completed their withdrawal from the city the next day, ceding Lysychansk. It looks like probably the remaining forces just took a northern route back down, and based on the tactical or deployment map here, you can see that it looks like a majority of the units are concentrated around the Lysychansk area. I'm not seeing that many units. I mean, so when you have a withdrawal like this and you are relying on an open source map, you're not going to find out potentially for a little while where each unit has ended up. But we can see here the special police brigades and battalions, they appear to have redeployed around Kramatorsk, likely doing some sort of maneuver and mobility support as units are repositioned after this major shift in the front. You can see up here there are a number of units who previously we haven't seen be frontline units. And I think that is a function of the fact that they were probably already in position to receive the retreating units. As units retreat from Lysychansk, they're going to pass through the lines of existing friendly units who were prepared, who were designated to become the front line as the retreat happened. There's the 80th Airborne, the 118th Territorial Defense Brigade. Who else is on the front line here? 114th TDF and 30th Armored, right? So you can see here, also worth noting that the Bohododichne, right, the 80th and 81st continue to hold Bohododichne and Dolna just completely rock solid. So hopefully you will also see the Foreign Legion and the Donbas Battalion. These guys are also redeploying, hopefully getting rotated off the line. We saw the Donbas Battalion sitting on the very front lines of Lysychansk, and undoubtedly dealing with some of the heaviest fighting. So all in all, it sounds like they were able to successfully retreat without taking mass casualties, without losing significant units, which is the most important thing in this fight. No one wants to see their armed forces encircled and destroyed. And while losing Lysychansk is pretty unfortunate, pretty tragic, it would be far more tragic if Ukraine was to lose a large portion of their fighting forces in the process. So what is next for Ukrainian armed forces, at least in the Donetsk and Luhansk region? Well, the answer is I think they need to establish a really firm front line. This Seversky Donetsk River, you can see, forms a really natural front line. It's hard to cross. It will take a lot of time and effort from the Russian forces, and that's why they're sort of locked into the western and northern banks of the river. The only place they have managed to successfully cross are Bohododichne. That the Russians have been stopped here, though there are continual questions. Right now that there are forces freed up from the fight in Lysychansk, will they be relocated to Bohododichne to try to push for Lysychansk, right, or other valuable Ukrainian sort of non-frontline cities. When we look, you can see that here the new front line is, there's not really a geographic point that's stopping it. It's on the units themselves to dig in and become just really hard to dislodge and to form this into a much tighter front line. I hope that because this was a planned retreat, Ukrainian planners have had weeks to plan out where they want their next front line to be, where they want their next defensive line. So hopefully these are very dug-in troops here that are holding the Russians at bay. All in all, guys, not great news, but I hope you understand from seeing this sequence of events over the last 2 weeks that my analysis, right, the military analysis of these maps is not that hard. There's only so many ways to solve these problems with the tools these armed forces have. And so, you know, I'm glad to see Ukrainian forces successfully completing this withdrawal. I'm disappointed to see the fall of Lysychansk to Russia. But all in all, it's better to be in the fight. If you've looked at the news lately, you know that Russia has pretty notoriously begun to crack down on draft dodging. The maximum enlistment age for the army is now an eye-popping 49. Recently an NHL draftee who had already signed $1 million contract with an NHL team here in the States was actually arrested and forcibly sent into the military. So when you're talking about celebrity level athletes still being forced into the army, it tells you just how desperate the Russian military is. But as we've seen in some of the other videos, Ukraine is also running short on military combatants. So it's sort of a race to I don't want to say a race to the bottom, but it's going to be about who can create a sustainable fighting force, a sustainable strategy. And that's a big reason why, as we've said, the Ukrainians, they are hoping to preserve as much of their combat power as possible through this strategic withdrawal. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. If you want me to break down some videos that are too spicy for YouTube, you want to become a member of the Patreon. Thanks to all of our Lieutenant tier patrons, and thanks to everybody that signed up. You guys are what make this channel possible. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next one.